It's only July and the season hasn't even started yet, and Middlesbrough are already contending with what looks to be an injury crisis. News emerged today on Friday that three new Middlesbrough players are set to miss the start of the Championship season after picking up injuries. Those three players are Azaz, George Edmundson and Seny Dieng. Now, Seny Dieng's been a long-term absentee. He's been out for a little while and he's been on his way back to fitness, but Rob Edwards confirmed that he wouldn't be available for the start of the new campaign, which isn't really too much of a surprise. Solbrin very much expected to be Middlesbrough's number one going into the season anyway. George Edmundson and Finn Azaz, those two are a little bit more surprising. Now, George Edmundson apparently picked up an injury on day one of pre-season training. As a result, he's been missing ever since, and it seems like he's going to be a little while longer on the sidelines before he's able to return. Finn Azaz, he hasn't featured in either of Middlesbrough's two friendly matches so far against Mansfield and Bradford City, and the news has come out that he's injured his quad, which means that he's not going to be available for that first game of the season against Swansea City either. Now, that's really quite concerning as far as Middlesbrough are concerned, because as a lot of supporters are aware, Middlesbrough's squad is looking really, really thin at the moment. At the time of recording, no signings have been made. Just yet. It does seem like Alfie Jones is going to be on the way in from Hull City, and there's potentially a signing of Abdoulaye Kante coming from Troyes in France. But at the time of recording, neither of those deals have been completed just yet, and so that does mean that as it stands at the moment, Middlesbrough's squad is looking very, very thin indeed, particularly in the attacking third. Obviously, we've got Tommy Conway up front. We've got no second striker, really, barring Marcus Forss and Delano Bergsorg. Slotting in behind, we've got the likes of Morgan Whittaker. We've got Riley McGree. Finn Azaz would have been a really important player, so the fact that he's missing is a bit of a concern. George Edmundson, his injury means that we're looking very, very light at the back as well. Obviously, we've got Dale Fry, we've got Darrell Lenihan, who himself is on his way back from injury and still building up his fitness. There's a huge amount of scrutiny over Rav van den Berg and his future at the club, with Feyenoord sniffing around, and it's seeming quite likely that he's going to be moving on at some point. It seems like it's going to be a case of when rather than if. Obviously, Alfie Jones coming in will be a really big boost, and that'll provide a little bit of cover there. But these injuries just sort of show how frail Middlesbrough's squad is at the moment going into the new season. Obviously, Middlesbrough also suffered injuries in that match against Bradford City with Alex Bangura coming off after not very long at all in the first half. That was only his second match for Middlesbrough after spending 442 days on the sidelines with an ACL injury. Riley McGree came off just before half-time as well. That was said to be a bit of a precaution, but again, at the time of recording, there's no confirmation on what either of those two injuries are. So it just sort of feels like Groundhog Day all over again for Middlesbrough. The last two seasons have been fraught with injury problems. It's been a real issue for Middlesbrough to keep all of their squad fit, and the fact that we're not even out of July yet, and we're already looking at a patched up Middlesbrough squad, a list of players who aren't going to be available come the start of the season in an already frail squad, is a little bit concerning as far as I'm concerned. It really kind of goes to show that something needs to change at the club, whether it's in the medical department or even in terms of personnel, because while a lot of these players, I like them, and when they're on the pitch, they are good players and players who can play a really big role for Middlesbrough. It just seems to be proving that a lot of these players in Middlesbrough's squad can't really be relied on to be fit over the course of a full campaign, and that's why it's so important to be bringing in the right people in the transfer market. Now, Alfie Jones, he played a lot of games for Hull City last season, so he's someone who should hopefully tick that box, barring a bit of bad luck that he would potentially get an injury. But he should hopefully be someone who's coming in and has a good track record of keeping himself fit. To be fair to Finn Azaz, he hasn't spent a huge amount of time injured. He was very much available last season. But for Middlesbrough, it's going to be really, really important to get out there in the transfer market and make sure that we are bringing in these new signings to strengthen our squad. Now, what do these injuries mean in terms of Middlesbrough's game plan in the transfer market? Probably not a lot. I don't think any of these signings are at this point kind of severe enough to say that Middlesbrough need to go out and replace them necessarily. Hopefully, if the likes of Finn Azaz and George Edmundson and Seny Dieng are going to be back, hopefully by the end of August, for example, there's no need for Middlesbrough to panic and go out and sign, say, a replacement for Finn Azaz, someone who can deputise for him. I don't think Middlesbrough's plan will change from that regard in terms of what they're looking to do in the transfer market. But it is certainly a little bit worrying. The fact that Middlesbrough could be going into that first game of the season with minimal new signings and with a handful of players missing through injury as well. It means that we are going to be very threadbare going into that match with Swansea City. And I think the concern for a lot of supporters is that if we don't hit the ground running this season, whether that's due to injuries or due to lack of signings, that we could potentially fall behind, because the Championship's going to be really, really competitive this season. I think last season was a great opportunity to at least get into the top six, and we scuppered that by finishing 10th in the league. This season's going to be very, very different, because with the three sides who came down from the Premier League, they're going to have undoubted quality, and they're going to be at the very least in that top six mix. You've got two sides coming up from League One who are really coming up and meaning business in Wrexham and Birmingham. They're going to be, I'd imagine, in the top eight at least, challenging for those playoff places as well. So there's not really going to be any, there's going to be no mugs in the Championship next season, and Middlesbrough are going to be very much, I hope they're going to be part of that pack who are chasing a top six finish. But that's why it's so important to get off to a strong start. We do not want to be in a position like we've been in previous seasons, where we make a slow start or we have a really bad patch and then we end up having to play catch up on the teams around us. We need to be getting making a strong start to the season, winning against Swansea, getting some good results, making sure that we are firmly in that picture from the very start. And I think these injury problems, they just I think for a lot of supporters, they are maybe a little bit triggering. It is something that we have dealt with a lot over the last couple of seasons, and I think it's just going to be so important to make sure that, yes, these injuries could just be merely bad luck, but hopefully it's not a trend that's going to unfold over the course of the campaign with a handful of players being out injured every single game and Middlesbrough having to put out a patched up 11. Hopefully as well, it will be the case that Middlesbrough will be able to bring in some new signings, more than just the likes of Alfie Jones, a number of new signings across the whole pitch, really, to add strength and depth to the squad, so that if we do suffer these injuries, we are equipped to do so. But at the time of recording, it really doesn't feel like that, and these injuries do kind of feel a little bit concerning, and they do leave us very, very threadbare, I've got to say, going into that start of the season. So I'm interested to know what you think. Are you concerned about these injuries? Is it triggering for you, the fact that the Middlesbrough seem to be suffering these injuries once again and the season hasn't even started yet? Drop into the comments below. Let me know what you think. And if you have enjoyed this video, please do hit like and hit subscribe as well. And I will catch up with you next time with hopefully some good news.